happens when you become obsolete? What happens when the world changes and you're not sure how to cope? This question is the one that is asked in the movie The Artist. It came out last year and won a bunch of awards. This movie has been a big hit in the eyes of many people. It's known for its art, for the silent movie factors, and for its silent movie acting, and for the questions it tries to answer and grapples with. So let's not waste any time as I review The Artist. In this film, a silent movie actor named George Valentine lives the perfect life as a big celebrity. One day, he is receiving fanfare after the premiere of one of his movies. A young lady named Peppy Miller accidentally runs into him. The two smile for the cameras and even share a kiss that ends up on the cover of all the papers. And it's the last they see of each other until Peppy Miller goes out to audition for a movie, and with the help of Valentine, even gets a part, and on her own eventually works her way up to becoming a star. However, while she is moving her way up the credits, Valentine finds out that silent movies are being booted out and to make way for the talkie films. I forgot to mention that this was in the latter 1920s and the early 30s. The talkie films become all the rage, and George Valentine finds out that his contract has been canceled in order to make way for new faces like Peppy Miller's. And as this happens, he slowly spirals down into a state of depression and denial as he loses his fame, his wife walks out on him, and he loses his house and his possessions. And the only support he has is from his loyal dog Uggy and his chauffeur Clifton and the kind-hearted rising starlet Peppy Miller, who continues to stretch out her hand in friendship to him, even though he often rejects it because he's a jerk. Anyways, George Valentine finds that he's unable to cope with this new world, and he spirals down into a state of self-pity, even burning down his house and his old movies. And he eventually gets to the point where he is about to commit suicide in his old apartment when Peppy Miller walks in on him and offers him a starting role in her new movie. And finally Valentine lets his guard down enough and lets go of his pride to let her help him, and he goes on to her movie. They tap dance, and he makes peace with the new world and with her friendship. There are many great things I like about this movie, and I think many great things people can say. For one thing, this movie is told in black and white, and not only that, in silent movie form, which I have to admit is not an easy thing to do at all. It requires a lot of acting and a lot of emotiveness, if you know what I mean. And it's not a task for the faint. And I have to admit, it's not a task for the faint-hearted, but it's something these actors do very well. Now, the whole movie is silent, and the only dialogue or some intertitles, I think they're called, that come up every time that someone says something important. And the fact that there was no sound in the movie gave them a lot of freedom, because when they did use sound, they used it for an artistic purpose. Like in one scene, when George was having a dream, he could hear sound from everybody else except his own mouth. And I especially like what they did during the ending. In the ending, we finally hear some music and some noise as George and Peppy Miller dance in a scene of one of her movies. And after that, we hear them breathing, we hear the people cheering all around them for them, and we hear everyone's voices for the first time. The people in this movie use this as a sign that George has come to peace with his new world, and that he's all right with his life now. And I think that is pretty cool. However, I love more than that the idea that comes out under it. We are living in a changing world, and this idea I got actually from reading the review on Plugged In, so don't get me for plagiarizing. And people on Plugged In, when they reviewed this movie, made a good point. The world around us is changing. People are throwing out handwriting, written letters, and stuff like that in terms for emails and text messages. The fact that the world is changing can make life a little bit hard to adjust to, and if you're someone like George Valentine, you might have an extremely hard time adjusting to your new life. And the fact that that you have to change your ways. However, this movie is an inspiration that no matter what happens, life can still move on, and that you have to accept that and move on along with it. And now for the Christian forms. Well, there's some bad things in this movie. The fact that George is a total jerk to his own wife, who he neglects on a daily basis. The fact that people cuss and give each other the bird. And the fact there's some sexually suggestive moments on the part of Peppy Miller. But besides that, that is not the main focus of the movie. The main focuses on a guy who's struggling to deal with life now that he is no longer famous. And if you've ever watched that episode of Batman with the cameo from Adam West, it actually reminded me a lot of that. Anywho, it's just, this life is a difficult one to adjust to. It can be a difficult one to deal with, especially in the new rising technology age, because life is changing so much. However, when I think about it, Jesus had a lot to adjust to when he came down to earth. He had hunger for the first time. He had to deal with people who didn't agree with him and who treated him like dirt. When in heaven, he had God and angels who didn't treat him like that. Anyways, it's an inspiration for anyone who's struggling to adapt to the world. That if this guy whose whole career was lost, and if Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God, came down to earth to be in a form that he was totally unfamiliar with, we can deal with the challenges of life as well. And so overall, I would say that this movie has a good message and is a good influence for Christians everywhere. This is the Christian Reviewer signing off. And yes, if you haven't noticed, I have a great new tripod, which I think will be a great aid in my other videos. Alrighty, ta-ta!